Hey guys, welcome to the Brothers of Merit podcast. This is Brandon Collier. I am one of the hosts and founders of this show. The Brothers of Merit's mission is to inspire men to seek brotherhood through Christ. Taylor and I are talking today about leading yourself. We think that's actually quite important because you can't expect to lead and disciple others without first trying to be a self-disciple and leading yourself. So Taylor is actually, funny enough, in Vietnam right now. He works for Under Armour, as you guys know. So he's in Vietnam doing a trip. And Taylor, what's up, bro?
What's up, man? From the other side of the world.
The other side of the world. It is actually 9:22 a.m. in Maryland and 9:22 p.m. in Vietnam as Taylor gets on a plane in the next 7 hours to head back home, thankfully. So how's it been over there, Taylor?
Yeah, things are good. Just been traveling, bopping around Asia because of what I do with Under Armour. So it's been good. It's been hot. So I know those of you on the East Coast are jealous of that because I saw it was -6 degrees back home when it was 88 degrees here. So, but yeah, we're just hanging out, just soaking it all in, getting to see a different culture. It's a lot of fun.
It's awesome. And I know it's been the Brothers of Merit side. It'll be awesome to have you home because Taylor and I have been trying to keep in contact every single day. We're doing stuff, and it's 12-hour difference, and where he was previous was 13 hours. So it's like it's been wild. But definitely praying for safe travels. I know Amber's probably ready for you to get home. You're ready to see your kids and wife. So
I was gonna say this at the end, but I think this is a good time. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's listening because, like Brandon's saying, like we've been going through a ton, and like there's a lot of growth that's happening. There's a lot of support that we're seeing and everything like that from like interviews that we have lined up and things like that. So we just wanted to take some time out and say thanks with that. So appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor, you hit the nail on the head. Thanks a lot. Your support's huge, and we have a lot of cool stuff lined up. Authors coming in. I mean, it's starting to roll, and it's really good material that you guys are, really be able to use, I believe. So today, like I said, we're talking about leading
100%.
yourself. Taylor and I kind of broke this down into 4 parts of leading yourself, and the first part is accepting who you are. The second part is holding yourself accountable. Third is investing in yourself. And the fourth is then remaining focused. So first, it's accepting who you are. We think this is pretty paramount in this whole process. And the reason we put it number 1 is because you can't try to be someone that you're not, because you'll fail. You'll fail in the end if you ultimately try to put a facade on of who you are, but you aren't that person inside. It's just going to tear you apart. So to dig down into this even more, we think the first part would be, find your strengths and utilize them to better you. So this could be your relationships with God. I think that's huge because, God gave you your spiritual gifts. So you have to do what God made for you to do with those spiritual gifts. And that's a strength of yours. So Taylor, I know you and I have talked a little bit on spiritual gifts before. So what's your view on those, and how do you feel about your spiritual gifts that God gives to people?
Yeah, man, I think that's definitely crucial. And I think that is one of those things that, like, when we're talking about leading yourself, is taking those things seriously and trying to, like you had said, is realizing that those are strengths and growing those strengths so that you can use those to lead other people. And if you're not focusing on leading those, then you're not going to be able to do anything for other people. And that's really what we're all here for, right? Like, God made us for a purpose. God made us to impact people, and he chooses to use us in those situations. And so we want to follow after him for that.
Yep, I agree with that. And another one is, use your strength to better your confidence. You know what I mean? Accepting who you are, you have to be confident with yourself, because lack of self-confidence then leads to, hesitation and other aspects of your life. So if you can't be confident with what you're carrying out in your day-to-day life, it's then going to run down into, let's say, your marriage, or it's going to run down into how you parent your children, all because you can't even pick yourself up and feel confident about how you carry out your day-to-day functions and how you carry out your day-to-day self-being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a huge one. And I think it actually, it says in 2 Timothy, it says, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed and correctly handles the word of truth. And I think that, like, in the topic of leading yourself, like when we're talking about having that confidence, finding your strength, and what your spiritual gifts are with God, being the man, the leader that you want to be, I mean, I think that is like what it's all about, right? Like you have to do your best to present yourself to God as one approved. And so if you're doing your best to do that, you're putting in time. You're putting in work to lead yourself to look like that, to look like someone who doesn't need to be ashamed, who correctly handles the word of truth, who studies the word of God, and doing the time to be that you understand that, right? You know what I mean? Like you're not just somebody that is just quoting the 5 Bible verses that you remember from Sunday school. You know what I mean? Like you pick up the word of God so that you can be the best that you can be, and so that you can have that confidence, because when you have the more knowledge and when you become passionately devoted to following that, then you can have that confidence to look like what God's called you to be.
Exactly. And it kind of goes into what we talked about again on this, which would be you need to use that strength and contribute to other men. Like utilize that strength that you have to help others. And that's the huge part of this brotherhood, and what we're seeking, is if, let's say, your spiritual gift is people, you know what I mean? You are good with talking with people, with trying to help somebody work through hard times and counseling and discipling them, then you have to utilize that strength to do so. It's not helping anyone to keep it inside, never use it, and just sit on it, because ultimately, going back to confidence, you lack the self-confidence to use it. So that's why we feel that these 3 things are important in actually accepting who you are, because they go in that order. You have to first have your relationship with God. That's number 1. And then you have to be confident with your relationship with him, but also with the spiritual gifts that he gave you. You have to trust him. And then when all that comes together, you then have to use it to contribute to other men.
Yeah, 100%. I've heard that like God shows up to other people through the way that he shows up to you, right? And that's one of the cool things like about brotherhood specifically, right? So like if God presents himself like an easy one, if God speaks to Brandon through worship music, right? Or that's like just how Brandon hears God, and he hears what he's trying to say to him and the will and all that things. And to me, I listen to God and he speaks to me through prayer or something like that. If I share that with Brandon and I'm using the spiritual gift that comes through that with Brandon, then Brandon sees Jesus in a different way, right? Like, because he sees him through worship. And so then I see Jesus through a different way, because Brandon has shared his spiritual gift of worship. You know what I mean? Like, and so I see Jesus differently. So God presents himself to all of us to then get a bigger picture to all of us from other people.
It's just recognizing your relationship with God and the strength that he gave you. But the next part of that is then figuring out your weaknesses, because God designed us to be strong in some suits, but in the next breath, he also gave us weaknesses, because that's just who we are. Everyone has them. So the first part of that is then you have to accept your weakness. I mean, there's no getting around it, and you will actually be a better person if you do accept your weakness up front and say, hey, this is my weakness, and accept it, because I'll never get better without doing that. If I continuously put my weakness just under the rug, anytime that needs to be exposed for whatever reason, you're going to then expose your weakness, and you're not going to succeed.
Right. Like you're not leading yourself at all if you're just pretending that you don't have that weakness, or if you're trying to hide that with something else. Like if you're someone who uses humor to hide that you're actually, awkward or depressed or something like that. You know what I mean? Like if there's something else that's masking that, you're not leading yourself at all by hiding a weakness, but you need to attack that weakness,
Absolutely. And that's the second part, is you have to work on that weakness. That you trying to better it, you're making it a strength, and you can never be, in the wrong for having too many strengths. That's just something that, you know what I mean? Like no one's going to look at you and say, wow, he's strong at being a disciple. He's strong at being a father. He's strong at being a man. He has a strength of courage and honor and integrity and all those things that you have worked on, because maybe integrity, that was a weakness at first. Maybe integrity of, you had an issue with pornography or alcohol or anything. Maybe that wasn't at one time a strength, but you have worked through it for years and years with God, and you have made it a strength. So now when other men look at you and they know that you are a man of integrity, they then learn from it, which then goes back to number 1 at that point, which is you have to contribute to others. So this
all you can help other people through that.
Exactly. This all goes back on everything. It's a big circle. You just have to know how it is applied and what it all means. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's why you have to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. And the last part of this one would be you have to own them. You have to make it a personal mission to better yourself at them.
Yeah.
You have to light your own fire because no one's going to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I used to coach a high school soccer team. I was actually the assistant. And when I was there was girls that they would do drills, like a shooting drill or whatever, and they'd always like use their right foot, and they're right-footed. And so like after a while, like you go in and you ask them, hey, like why don't you switch over to using your left foot? And they're like, well, because like I'm not so good at my left foot. Like I know I can do the drill with my right foot. It's like, well, hey, why don't you work on the things you suck at, so then the things that you suck at become something you're good at. Like, that's what I used to tell them all the time. Like, how about you get good at your left foot? You're not going to get good at your left foot if you pretend your left foot's just not there.
Exactly.
You have to put in time. You got to put in the drills. You got to own it. And you have to, and that's one of my absolute favorite verses is somewhere in the New Testament. I didn't write this one down, so I don't know. Maybe they'll take my Bible degree away for this, but it's somewhere in the New Testament. I think it's in the Corinthians maybe. But it's how like God makes us stronger through our weakness. Like, and if I can boast in anything, I can boast in my weakness because his strength comes through in my weakness. I mean, that's what this is all about, right? Like, God brings us closer to him by being the strength in our weakness, right? Like, God shows up when he is the only reason that something could have happened, because I'm weak and I don't have the strength or the power to accomplish whatever happened. Then that was God's strength. That's where God gets glory. I love that. And we don't get to see that part of it if we're not leading ourselves first, right?
That's exactly right, man. And the last part for this whole thing goes back to episode 2, which was disregarding what others think. Because if you allow it to, it's just going to start influencing you, basically like second guessing yourself, and you're going to focus on that weakness in the wrong way. It's good to focus on your weakness if you're trying to better it, but if you're focusing on that weakness because you're allowing others to just derail you off of your mission, which is make it a strength, then it's not helping you at all. Don't let their insecurities become your problems, and that's a big part of it. So this then leads us into the second one, which is, holding yourself accountable. You can't listen to other people before yourself. You know what I mean? So you have to then hold yourself accountable to continuously strive to make your weaknesses strengths. You have to set goals. You have to socialize those goals with friends. I mean, you have to prioritize. All this goes into a deeper, which we're going to now. So this is key when you're holding yourself accountable, because you can't expect to lead others, your family, kids, anybody, if you're not putting in the time to lead yourself. Right. So the first thing that you and I came up with is setting goals. This is an easy way to evaluate your progress and also to tell if you've achieved them or not. So set a goal, which at that point, depict them between short and long-term goals. Like you and I have kind of done that with Brothers of Merit. What do we want to see this grow into? And then the long term, what do we think and hope for that God has in store for us with Brothers of Merit? Right.
So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the verses that I was drawn to when we were thinking about this topic is Proverbs 4:23. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So, I mean, I bring that up at this point because, like, when it comes to, like, holding yourself accountable to growing and leading yourself first, that's because you have to, I mean, it says above all else, guard your heart, right? The most important thing. You can try to do everything else right, but above all else, guard your heart. Like, lead yourself first. Fill your heart with Scripture. Pray to God. Spend time with brothers. Get fellowship, learning more about Him. Invest in your family. And that all stuff flows from your heart's desire. And you guard your heart and you lead your heart. And when you do that, and when you hold yourself accountable to put that first, and when you above all else, you guard your heart, then all of that other stuff flows from it, right? That's when, like the stuff that we've been talking about at Brothers of Merit, I've mentioned in the blog a couple of times, that's when you become a better father. You become a better husband. You become a better employee. You become a better friend. You become a better brother. You just become better, right?
All of that is exactly right. And that can be put into the part of the goals, which would be prioritizing them. You know what I mean? Like you have to begin with goals that are higher priority than your smaller goals. So if you have two goals, let's say you sit here and you say, one of my goals is to stop being a liar, stop lying and fabricating things. And your other goal is, I want to drop 10 pounds. I challenge you to, some people may say 10 pounds because your health is more important. I don't believe that. I think the lying would be the higher priority of a goal, because who you are as a man is going to then dictate how you take care of yourself as a man. You know what I mean? So you have to learn the proper way to prioritize that goal first. And then at that point, then you can choose the goals based on how obtainable are they in a way. So, and how like relative are they to your life. So your goal right now may be very well, I want to play in the NFL. But the goal previous to that is, this season I want to catch for 200 yards per game. You know, I want to receive 200 yards per game. Which one of those should come first? Obviously, it's you want to receive 200 yards per game before you go to the NFL, because that it doesn't make sense to go to the NFL if you aren't able to do that. You know what I mean? If you have bricks for hands and you can't catch the ball. So you have to know which goals are actually obtainable and relative to what path you're trying to take in life. And personally, I think you should focus on one at a time. I really think that you shouldn't try to do too much, because then you're taking focus off of each goal. That's how I view it.
Sure, I hear that. And I think that, ultimately, I think the cool part about, like, if you're leading yourself and if you're taking the time to lead yourself to try to look more like Jesus every day, and that's something that you haven't done. We've actually heard from a couple people through our social media channels who have like mentioned that Brothers of Meredith has inspired them to start to take their relationship with God more seriously or things like that. Like if that's you, then the cool thing about that is like I'll not necessarily contradict what you said there, Brandon, but like agree with you, but also say that like a rising tide raises all ships. If you're spending time in the Word now and you're taking the time to lead yourself and fill yourself up so you can pour yourself out to others, then like you're gonna start to look better across the board, even first. So I guess I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I'm saying that like maybe you're at a point in your life where you need to take that first step. You know what I mean? You need to start to look more like Jesus, and you need to start to make that a priority, because you can't do anything else. Like what it said in Proverbs, above all else, guard your heart, for everything else flows from that. You can't do anything else if your heart's not right. If you're leading yourself and getting your heart in a right place, then like I said, a rising tide's going to raise all ships, and you're going to start to look better. And you're going to start to look a little bit more like Jesus. And then you can focus on those things that have been a problem. You can't just go, it's like we said, you can't just go after a weakness. Like if you are coming into this whole thing and you're saying like, I want to not be an alcoholic anymore, rather than just attacking that first and then be like, I'll get to the fact that I'm a compulsive liar next. It's like, well, maybe we just need to get to the point where you just lead yourself and you get your heart in check, and then everything's going to start to look better. And then there's something that's a bigger issue here, and now we can start to attack the alcoholism.
Yeah, we see the same. I think that goes back to the prioritizing, which goals are. And it's tough. I get it. Everyone goes through, Christian or non-Christian, male or female, everyone goes through internal battles and things that they're, battling against. So it's a tough path. But, another thing you could do is, if you have a goal in mind and something you're trying to achieve, socialize it. Tell some close friends or family members about it. That makes failure public to them. You know what I mean? So if you fail, they're going to call you out. That is another way to hold you accountable. And it's also then going to put some fire into you that says, hey, I can't fail at this, because if I fail at it, they're going to see, they're going to know, and they're basically going to be able to call me a failure, which will then just spark another weakness. And, that's the point. So friends will at that point always be there for support, and they'll also be able to give you advice if you need it, but they'll never know it if you don't share this goal with them. And another part, dude, is someone else, may have that same exact problem. So that then gives you an accountability partner. That gives you somebody to talk to work with, to push through it. When you're feeling down or you're getting ready to go and look at that magazine or internet site you probably shouldn't have or shouldn't do, you contact that person. That's what an accountability partner is for. You know what I mean? Yep. So unless you share it with these people, they'll never know. They may look at you and be like, man, John has everything figured out. He is perfect. But on the inside and behind closed doors, John does not have it figured out, and he is not perfect. John has the same issue that maybe you do, but until you socialize it and try to hold each other accountable, then you'll never know. So that's why we always come back to what Brothers of Merit is about, and that's seeking brotherhood.
Yep, I was just about to say that. I guess it's a good thing we're deciding to do this together, huh? That is my absolute, without a doubt, favorite part of brotherhood, just in general. Like what we have with the group of guys that you set up, and like what we have with brothers is that accountability. It's that taking that deeper step, and it's that verbalizing what you struggle with and what you want to lead yourself in, and pulling other people in to help you through that. That is like the absolute coolest thing. And you learn that those awkward conversations, you know what I mean? Like when you bring up something that's like, Marty talked about it in the last episode, like I had to muster up the courage to really like have this conversation. Like we've all had those, but like they get easier. They get a whole lot less scary when you learn that like, oh, hey, last time this actually turned out really well on the back end. And it sucked for a little bit because I had to like air my dirty laundry out there, but it was with a brother who loves me and cares about me. And now we both look a little better. And now we're working towards leading ourselves a little bit better. You know what I mean?
Exactly, man. And it's less scary because you now have gotten it out there. You now have that brother that you can confide in, that you can talk to and work through things together, and you know he's not judging you. You know what I mean? And that's the best part about brotherhood and sisterhood. When you look at our wives and their girlfriends and all, that's the best thing about just surrounding yourself with godly people. You know what I mean? You're all trying to achieve the same exact thing, which is your walk together with God. So, the next part is investing in yourself. So we've gotten to accepting who you are. You know, you have to realize that God has given you spiritual gifts. He's given you strengths. You have to accept your strengths. You have to figure out your weaknesses, accept your weaknesses, work on them, and then stop thinking and worrying about what other people say, because they're always going to. Number two, hold yourself accountable. You know what I mean? Set goals. With those goals, long-term, short-term, socialize them. Tell your friends about them. Tell your family members about them. So when you fail and if you fail, they can then bring you back up, stand by you, support you, give you advice, and you can push through it again. And also find an accountability partner, someone struggling with the same exact thing you are that you didn't know until you seek this out, and prioritize them. Make them realistic. And this part now is investing in yourself. You have to put the time in to better yourself so that others will follow you. You can't be like, nobody sits here and says, I am just super inspired by Jeff, but he is a horrible person. Nobody says that. You know what I mean? Like you don't say that. So the first part of this would be put in the time with hard work. Not every trait comes natural. So for instance, if you have a trait or a strength now that is public speaking, but 15 years ago may not have been. Some people have that gift. They are born to just lead and talk in public. And we all know that. We have met those people. But others have to work on it. And that's a common weakness across the board with many people, is public speaking. So you got to put in the work. You have to read books. You have to go and get some education and take a speech class if you want. Like, you got to put in the work. And then if it's a physical goal, if it's the guys playing in the NFL or the guys playing in the Premier League, Cristiano Ronaldo did not get where he's at today because he didn't put in the work.
Right.
He is one of my favorite soccer players, and I think he's, one of the best in the world besides, Lionel Messi and all. But
Cristiano's better than Messi, but we'll discuss that on our other podcast.
I'm agreeing with you. So, but you guys get what I'm saying. Like, do whatever physical aspects needed for that goal, but you got to put in the work.
Yes. No, absolutely, 100%. And I think that's one of the cool things that gets overlooked a lot of times. You want to be the superstar, but you don't want to put in the work that it took Cristiano Ronaldo to get there. And he invested in himself, and he put in time from the time that he was like 5 years old to get to where he was, right? And the cool thing is that doesn't just have to be for sports, right? Like, we have people in our lives, I'm sure, that like you look up to. I know you do. We've talked about that. There's people in our lives that we want to be like, not because they make millions of dollars, not because they're in the best shape of their lives, but because, like, for me, one of them is my college soccer coach. Another one is one of my best friend's dads. So Miles, I'm hoping that we can have him on the podcast at some point. You might be listening. Miles, what's up? Like, he's someone who inspires me because he is one of the most godly men I've ever met. because he does life looking like Jesus better than anyone I've ever met. Like, he leads his family well. He leads his wife well. He does Brotherhood well. I want to look like that. And that's like the end goal. That's like Cristiano Ronaldo. And he got there by putting in work over time, right? Like, I've talked to him before. He worked in the CIA, and we, in Maryland, we live like 2 hours away from DC without traffic. So he would wake up at like 2 a.m. and he would have to drive. And he's told me before that he would either listen to like Christian radio, or he would just turn off the radio and he would have index cards on his visor, and he would just sit there and memorize scripture for his entire commute. And like, that's what he would do every day. Like, that's how he would better himself. That's how he would lead himself so that he could be someone that other people are looking from the outside and saying, I want to look like that.
Wow. That's actually pretty awesome. I'm looking forward to meeting this guy. That's wild, dude. But this then leads to our next point, I think, in a way, which would be getting rid of the toxic things in your life. So when I say you have to invest in yourself, investment is a serious thing. You know, when you say investment, people pretty much think of money. Like, that's typically what people think of when you say investment. So everyone takes their money serious. Everyone takes money, like, that is what drives this world, because in reality it is. So when you say investment in yourself, you need to do the same exact thing. You need to take the investment part serious. For instance, habits. If you have any bad habits that are going to hold you back, or they're going to waste your time and your money, get rid of them. You want to say your goal is to better your health, but you don't want to put down the cigarettes. You know, that's counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
So that's a habit that you need to kick to the curb. Friends, like, surround yourself with those that, you know, won't drag you down. They aren't going to hold you back, and that may bring you to the old you that you're trying to get away from. Like, you are who you surround yourself with. And another part, you know, is get rid of old goals. And I say that by, if you have a goal that has been a, in quote, goal for the past 5 years, maybe it's time that you take a step back and reevaluate that as a goal. Is it really a goal if you have not, in these 5 years, gotten to the point where you think you should be? Or is it not a goal, or are you not focused on it enough? A reevaluation has to occur at that point.
Right. And this one, I think, is like the hardest part of this whole process. This one can suck.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because this one could be, it's giving up habits. Like, it's giving up things that you don't even think about doing anymore. Now, it's a habitual thing, but we all have them, you know, whether they are, for me, I have been in the habit of, I like wake up too late, and my morning routine is in the habit where I have a very short amount of time where I don't have any time to spend time in the Word. And then that falls by the wayside throughout the day. And then that's, you know, like, I've gotten into that habit before. That's incredibly hard to break in ways. And for some people, that's a much bigger situation than just maybe sleeping in or the way you handle your morning. Maybe your habit is the fact that, like, you go out and, like, just what you do, you meet your friends, you meet the guys to watch the game and drink Thursday, Friday, Saturday of every single week. You know what I mean? And, like, is that necessarily the best use of your time? I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying that if you come to a decision where it is, that's going to suck to give it up.
Yes.
But on the other end of it, it's something that you have to sit there, you have to evaluate, you have to pray about it. I'm not just telling you to do stuff because we're telling you to. But I, like, to go back to the very first point, my spiritual gift is faith. So, like, I just have the gift of, if God tells me to do something, then whatever that looks like, I have the spiritual gift of being able to jump off of the cliff, to get out of the boat and follow whatever he's trying to do. So, like, I'm going to be someone who's going to be a proponent of, like, if God's telling you that you need to be involved in something and, like, you just don't feel fulfilled at work, like, I'm someone that's going to tell you, like, you need to go do that thing. You need to quit your job and you need to go do that thing that inspires people to live like Jesus.
Absolutely.
You know, so maybe there's people whose spiritual gift is wisdom that they counteract, and then Jesus shows himself through both of us, right?
And he tries to ground you.
Exactly. But, like, the point is, if you hear a stirring, if God's telling you that this isn't necessarily the best thing, and you know that, it could suck. It's not just going to be easy things. I guess that's my point. It's not just going to be, oh, well, I've been doing this for 30 years and it's toxic to my walk and looking like a better man, but I'm going to be able to drop that tomorrow, cold turkey, and it's never going to be a problem again.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you bring up the faith and wisdom, like yours is faith and on. That brings me to the last point, which is say no to others. And when I say that, I'm not saying it in like a jerk type of way. What I mean by that is that you need to focus on yourself until you're ready to lead. So for instance, your spiritual gift is faith. If your faith in something is, you know what, I'm just going to pack up my bags and I'm going to drive to Ohio or wherever it be, and I'm just going to start fresh. Like, I don't know what's in sight. I don't know what's in store, but God is telling me that I need to do that. So don't listen to others. Don't allow someone else to deflect that view. Do it. You know what I mean? Decide who you want to be, decide who you want to help, and decide how you want to do it. Make that investment and just get after it. I know, though, like you said, someone else's spiritual gift is wisdom, and they're going to say, oh, Taylor, pump those brakes and let's try to reevaluate. But that's why I say know who to say no to and learn not to be a pushover. That's one of my problems. I struggle with that, like not being a pushover per se, but like I struggle with, like I said in the second episode, listening to what people have to say about me. So that's kind of where I struggle with is I'm too worried about what someone has to say about what I'm doing rather than focusing on me sometimes. So this, as we've said at the beginning of this podcast, we're all men going through this. And the only thing that qualifies us to talk about this stuff is the fact that we're going through it and we're just trying to better ourselves and everyone else. So that's what qualifies us to do it. But I'm learning it just like everyone else.
100%. 100%. That's a great point. That's what I was actually just about to say. The point there that I think that you just said that is the absolute crucial part is I feel like God told me to go to Ohio, that I'm going to do that. Because that's sometimes my problem is like I want to do my spiritual gift is faith. So I want to do something that like shows that I have great faith. So like I just want to go up and move my family to Africa. And it's like, well, is God telling me to do that? And sometimes you just have to go through praying and you have to just determine if he's really telling you to do that. And you just have to follow what he's trying to tell you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think like my favorite part of this whole thing, like leading yourself first. And another one of my favorite verses, we're hitting all the favorites here, is in John 3:30. It says, he must increase, I must decrease.
Wow.
And that's just like simple. It's to the point. But it's in anything that happens in life, in whatever, like what happens in my life, my actions, whatever that is, he must increase, I must decrease. He needs to be a bigger deal than me in any situation. I don't want any glory. I don't want any honor to come to me in any situation or whatever my life looks like at all. He must increase, I must decrease. And we only do that by leading ourselves, right? Because when I'm not leading myself, then I'm selfish and I'm focusing on myself increasing. But if I'm leading myself and I'm looking more like Jesus, then he increases and I decrease. And then my heart is guarded and then everything else flows from that. And it's all a big cycle the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly, man. We'll segue into the last part, which is, remaining focused. So we've hit on 1, accepting who you are, 2, holding yourself accountable, 3, investing in yourself, and then 4, the last part is remain focused through all of that. So leading yourself is an ongoing battle. It's something that you have to have discipline in. You have to stay true to who you are as a person. So you have to remember that first, God created you and you have to accept who he created you to be. Second would be, don't fall back on some of your old habits and the ways you just use those goals and what you've, driven to get through that you just fixed. Don't fall back. Stay disciplined. Stay focused, drive. And that's where we said earlier, have that personal fire in you that says, I don't want to go back to who I used to be. You know what I mean? I want to stay accountable to myself and I want to stay accountable to others. But before I can be an accountability partner, really, I have to know that I trust myself to be an accountability partner. So that comes back to discipline. You have to have integrity. You have to have moral standards in place for you as a man. So like when other people aren't around, obviously you got to be who you say you are. You have to be honest with yourself. Like you can't tell yourself lies to make yourself feel better. You know what I mean? Like, and then you have to be intentional with what you say and you have to mean it. You can't sit there and lie to somebody and say, you know what, I'm struggling with the same exact thing. I'm there exactly with you when you're not. you're not at that point, you're not leading anybody properly and the best way you can if you're just lying to them.
Yeah. And this is actually, I think this is a complete side note. It doesn't really talk about leading others, but you kind of brought it up. Like, not lying and like being willing to say like tough things. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I actually just had breakfast with a group of guys that I would consider brothers over Christmas because people were coming back in to see families and stuff like that. So we had breakfast and I brought up Brothers of Merit and everything, and basically just like, we're trying to inspire people to do this, like to have relationships with people where we hang out, we love each other, and we just have a ton of fun, but we also talk about serious things. And later in the conversation, somebody was like, so, in the new year, what are we reading? What are we doing to get better? And one of the guys, he said that he's going to pick up a book that he meant to be reading, but he dropped it, and just life happened. And he had a lot of life stuff happen. If anybody had an excuse, it's probably him. So he was like, yeah, but, I dropped it. And we were all like, but, you had some excuses. And one of the guys there was like, still a drop, though. He was like willing to step up and be like, hey, that was still a drop though, right? I get it. I'm not saying you didn't have an excuse, and I'm not like beating you into the ground for it, but I'm saying I'm here to hold you accountable when you said you were going to read that book and you didn't. So let's make sure we read it next time. Yeah,
that is exactly it, man. It's just holding yourself accountable, being a better man. And another part, the last part, and we'll start to wrap it up, is having courage. No matter what the task is at hand, no matter what the goal is that you want to achieve, don't be afraid of it. Grab the bull by the horns and just get after it. Don't be afraid to better yourself over other people. You know what I mean? Like, everyone has the same opportunity as you and the next person to better themselves, to make a goal, to accomplish that goal. Don't feel bad because you're bettering yourself and pursuing a goal and going higher than these other people are next to you, because you're putting in the time and the effort to do so. Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid of failure. That was one of our biggest things with this, and it's still ongoing, but don't be afraid of it. Like, you'll never know until you try something. God has the plan. We don't. If we think this is our plan and we do something and it's not, well, then it just wasn't the plan. But there's something else in store for us that God has planned. So don't be afraid of failure. Just go into it and do your best that you can and remain focused.
Yep. 100%, man. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, we'll start to wrap it up because you're ready to go on a plane ride. But guys, just remember, we kind of broke it down. Number 1, accept who you are. Number 2, hold yourself accountable. 3, invest in yourself. And the last one, 4, is remain focused. All of this is achievable, and it's been done. Look at all the people that are way more successful than you are. And I don't say that being like a jerk. I'm saying that in reality, there's always somebody better than you at what you do. So look at somebody, the next person that's more successful, and how did they do it? What were their goals? How did they accomplish those goals? Research it, get into it, and figure it out, and then do it yourself. So, yeah, man, it's some good stuff. I'm glad we got this off the ground. You are, like I said, in Vietnam, which is insane that we can sit here and have this conversation in a different time zone. And for the most part, the quality's been pretty good. Guys, thanks for listening.
Sorry about the quality of the video for anybody who thought it would obviously this is via Skype, so future things will be the same quality as it has been in the past, so apologize for any equality up front. But
check us out, guys. www.brothersofmerit.com. We have a lot of cool stuff in store, like we said at the beginning. Next week, we will be interviewing Dr. Randy Hemphill. He is the author of the book, The Restored Man, and I know Taylor is as well. Super stoked to be interviewing him. It's our first interview, and I'm reading the book now, and I'm in chapter 3, and I'm really digging it. So it's gonna be pretty cool.
The other thing that we would say is shamelessly share Brothers of Merit. If we could ask you to do that. We started it off by saying thank you. We're going to end by saying thank you. But, that's why we started this thing, is to be an outlet for you. Like, if you're thinking of people that you want to have a brotherhood with, use this as a tool. Like, hey, I've been checking out this podcast. Or, obviously, that helps us out a lot. If you rate and review the podcast, you share us on Instagram, you tell people about it. That supports the show and what we're doing here a lot. So we super, super appreciate that. And we can't thank you enough. But, yeah, like Brandon said, we have tons of really cool things coming. We just talked about it before. We have interviews lined up through the middle of March already, and a lot of really cool things way beyond what we ever could have thought of already. We have some promotions coming with some swag and some things coming down the pike, so stay tuned. And like I said, we appreciate you guys, and thank you very much.
Yeah, guys, so until next week, I'll talk to you soon, and stay safe.
See ya.